What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this lovely day, beautiful road, beautiful weather, beautiful car. My name is Martin and today I'm test driving the Renault Megane RS Trophy Mark IV, and it's been 5 years since I drove it, so I remember it to be super exciting and really good. And since we don't have Renault Sport anymore, unfortunately, it sort of has evolved into Alpine. But are we missing out? Should we have had a Mark V Megane RS? Because I think especially the Mark III has huge appreciation. I think the same goes for the Mark IV. Let's talk about the differences, and let's talk about the differences with modern sort of hardcore hot hatches like the Golf GTI 50, the Civic Type R, stuff like that. Let's go. So it's a trophy. That means we have special wheels, special Brembo brakes, special tires, and a Torsen limited slip diff. Now Torsen means torque sense. So once it senses it needs to slip or lock, it does so. So first you have a little understeer and then it sort of pulls in and the diff starts working. Beautiful flare fenders. That's, I think, one of the biggest selling points of the Mark IV Megane RS, that wide body that looks absolutely insane, I think, especially from the rear. So we have this beam running across, this silver beam with trophy on it, but as I understood from the owner, if you got a normal one, a non-trophy, and went for the cup suspension, you also got this beam with trophy sticker on it. Pretty weird. That's French logic, I guess. Silver trim. Good job, guys. 4 control. That means we have 4-wheel steering, which was new for this gen. It was one of those first gens of 4-wheel steering. Sometimes it's a little weird and a bit like you're sort of pushing a shopping cart, something like that. But overall, it's quite good. And of course, there was also a Megane RS Trophy R. They love their product differentiation over at Renault Sport. And then it didn't have the 4 control. That's a fun fact. So we have different exhausts for the Trophy, which doesn't have a mid silencer. And this diffuser is insane. Normally it's like this cute little bumper piece, bit of plastic to make it look cool, and actually does nothing. But this one is actually really flat, going like 1.5 meters or a full meter underneath the car, completely flat. So this is actually functional. And just look at how wide and low that car is. I love how it looks. Center exhaust. Go follow the owner, Tonic Trophy RS. 21-year-old, and then you drive this. How cool is that? I didn't drive a car like this when I was 21. I was doing something very wrong back then. So of course, if you had the Trophy, you got more power. Let's talk about that when looking at the engine. How does that work? Like that. So, not the prettiest engine, I have to admit. It's a 1.8 turbocharged, coming from the 2-liter in the Megane 3 RS. And you do really notice that. So it's a 1.8 different cylinder head with the Trophy and a different turbo. So that means we no longer have 280 horsepower, but 300 horsepower, and coming from 390 to 400 Newton meters. But it's just to make it also more aggressive. So it's really a top end block, this. Download doesn't really have anything. It's a massive turbo, it's right there. And as you can also see, we also have a different downpipe, which also deletes the OPF, because after 2019, something like that, they all got an OPF. And this one no longer has it. It also has a sports cat, so small catalytic converter. Top speed 260 kilometers an hour instead of 250, 0 to 100, 5.7 instead of 5.8. So the difference really isn't all that big when you look at the engine specs or you know, the performance of it. But I vividly remember that I thought the trophy was a lot better than the normal one. Just a lot sharper, more on edge, also drivetrain wise. So it doesn't always translate into massive performance specs. Sometimes it's just about the driving experience, which I remember to be really, really good. Let's see if my memory is right and how it sort of compares to a modern really good hot hatch like a Golf GTI 50. Moving around the thingy. There we go. So it's properly loud. As I said, trophy exhaust, so no mid silencer, and then we have that downpipe. I have the seats down, which also makes it a bit louder, of course. We have the Recaro bucket seats, which were an option with the trophy. They're not brilliant. I mean, I'm not really all that snug and supported. They do look really cool with all the Alcantara, and they're pretty decent, have to admit, but they're not perfect. We also have an RS monitor, pretty cool. Renault Group really like this sort of Nissan GT-R displays. You can get all kinds of figures and temperatures, stuff like that. Let's go for the EDC gearbox temperature, because when we first drove the EDC, it was with a Clio RS, and it constantly overheated the gearbox. Just a stock press car, which I thought was quite remarkable. Now, you get these paddle shifters, but they're pretty small and pretty high up. Why is that? Why aren't they more over here, in the middle, something like that? That's because, I don't know why, but every French car somehow needs to have a volume, what is it? Controller. I'm not even going to say it's a button. It's a control unit. It's a freaking Nintendo 64 controller that sticks out from the steering column. So that's why you have these weird positioned paddle shifters. Not really ideal, you know, when you're cornering. You always have to lift your hand up and shift up or shift down, whatever. Now, there is a manual mode, so you flick it to the left, and you would expect it to also be shiftable like that, but it's not. Okay, let's just get going. First gear, manual mode. What's also cool is we have different driving modes. Of course we do, but there's also a perso mode, which you definitely need, and then you can alter all these different parameters. So I have dynamic steering, which I put into sport because I think race is too heavy. ESC, drivetrain, exhaust. Let's go for race for the exhaust. I think that's just pops and bangs software. Other than that, nothing really all that exciting to change. So, as you can hear, it is really, really loud. Really loud. I'm a bit embarrassed, to be honest. Oh, that's loud, that upshift. So as I said, 0 to 100, 5.7 seconds. It does have launch control, but even, you know, if you just floor it, it really struggles traction wise. So if I put ESC into off mode, go into first, floor it. I don't want it to like burn up the tires because it's not my car, it's a viewer's car, but it's quite sluggish down low, both speed wise and RPM wise. Luckily, once you go out of first gear, you notice that gear ratios are pretty short. So second gear, not even 100 kilometers an hour. So that's really good. And that's because of that massive turbo, of course. You have a much narrower bandwidth, power band. So you need shorter gears to stay within that band. Sorry about that, sir. That was... I spat in his face with the exhaust. Spat! Love that word. Spat again in the tunnel. It feels to me like quite the hardcore solution, this drivetrain, which I actually quite like. But the car itself doesn't feel that hardcore. The car itself feels a bit big and heavy, to be honest, especially when you compare it to a Megane Mark III, which felt so light, vivid, small, nimble. This doesn't have that same feeling. Maybe they implemented that 4-control 4-wheel steering to make it feel smaller, but I think, I don't know the figure, but I'll show you right here what the difference is in terms of weight with the Mark III. I think it's quite a lot. It does feel like it's quite a lot. I'm guessing 170 kilos? Something like that. Honestly, don't know. Speedo cam, always forget. So I don't really get any feedback through the steering wheel, which I think is a bit of a shame, because that was the strong point of the Mark III. So I always think, like, the internet always says, like, after 2020 cars did not get any better, but I think in terms of hot hatches, even though they got killed nearly entirely, I think VW and Honda have definitely developed, because their latest models, to be honest, are really a level up from this. Brakes are really nice. That's where you notice that, you know, Renault Sport, they used to be like the cheap man's Porsche. Remember the Clios, remember the... There's the owner on the bridge. Let's give him some soundtrack. The trophy R's, they came with insane packaging, you know, just track focused hardware that you could get. Cup suspension setups, Brembo brakes, Recaro seats, carbon wheels, carbon brakes. They did crazy stuff. That no other brand did with hot hatches. So yeah, I do think we lost a big player with Renault. It's a bit like Messi stopped playing football when Renault decided to no longer make Renault sport models. I really miss them. They make fantastic product, and this is a perfect example of their expertise. So as I said, that Torsen limited slip diff, it first needs to sense torque. So you feel this little understeer push, and then you get on throttle and it pulls you inwards. Really cool sensation. To 200, something like 14 seconds. Another thing I don't like is the steering wheel. It's weirdly shaped. It's rock hard. It's not really all that nice. Same goes for the pedals. Other than that, it's a cool car. It looks cool. They're pretty rare, I feel like. I hardly ever see one. It's not like a Golf GTI that you can see on every corner. So yeah, I think it's a bit of an oddball, which I always really like. That's what the French are good at. Same goes for the 308 GTI, which was in the same era as this, which we also really like. So yeah, massive thanks to the owner, and hope you liked the video. See you at the next one, guys. Bye.